staying awake. So I'll try to, keep you guys entertained as best I can. So as Brian said, my name is Corey McFadden. I work for a company called Infradapt. We're a Digium select reseller. We also do a lot of contact center stuff, data services, etc. Basically, the company's been in business for about 5 years. We do a mix of voice and data. So we do a lot of cloud services, hosted computing, things like that. And then we have a pretty strong vertical within the contact center space and also enterprise Asterisk deployments. So without further ado, the customer here was a company called Harriet Carter Gifts. Show of hands, who has ever heard of this company? Anyone ever received their catalogs? Okay. So as you guys probably know, they're an old company. They've been in business for more than 50 years. And basically, they've got 3 different locations in Pennsylvania. The main location is in Montgomeryville. You can see the photo there. These guys decimate forests, mailing these catalogs out every year. They ship millions and millions every month, and they get a corresponding call volume of people placing orders. So during the season, the holiday times and things like that, it tends to be very hot. So they needed a solution that would allow them to deal with that. And I'll talk a little bit about what we did. But it's helpful to understand kind of the customer's infrastructure and the resources they have internally, so the project makes a little bit more sense. So Harriet Carter has a pretty strong website where they do a lot of ordering and fulfillment that they've basically developed internally. It's a Microsoft SQL-driven ASP solution. They've got a couple in-house developers that maintain and develop. They are relatively savvy as an IT shop. They use and they understand virtualization. So, when we talk about technologies like VMware ESXi and things like that, they get it, they use it, so it really makes things like this easier. They have an internal as well as an external call center operation. So, for example, they have about 100 order takers at their peak during the holidays in-house. And then, obviously, when they get a spike, they don't want to have people waiting on hold for a long period of time. So they flow calls out to 3 different outsourcers based on allocations and hold times. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then they've got a customer service department, which is exclusively in-house. So the company actually has 3 different brands. One is Harriet Carter, their main catalog. There's another one called Fresh Finds that's about 3 or 4 years old. It's a little bit more upscale from the product standpoint. There's less whoopee cushions and noisemakers and things like that, and more home decor. And then they've got another division called Plymouth Direct, which basically does the direct TV stuff. So every time you see one of those ads seen on TV products and it says call now, that goes right to the answering service outsourcers, and they deal with the customer service in-house. So that's them in a nutshell. Basically, we were brought in to take a look at their aging Avaya Definity platform. When I say aging, it really wasn't that old, but it did have some gaps in terms of functionality that they were looking to extend. They were looking at the pricing with Avaya, and they said, well, that's pretty pricey, and then the maintenance renewals and everything else. So one of the longer-term goals was to implement SIP trunking, take advantage of the cost savings there and the flexibility that they get with some of their telcos, and then improve their contact center operations with some new tools like call and screen recording. That was a big thing that motivated the project. So as you'll see, that's part of the solution here. And then enhance the way they deal with outsourcers, and I'll talk about that a little bit. They're a mature company, so we really were not able to bring in sort of a homegrown, homebrew kind of a solution. They really wanted something that was mature, was stable, and was proven out there in the contact center world. They're used to the Avaya product, they're used to the reporting and the analytics that were available there, so we really needed something comparable to that. We brought in a solution called Presence, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. They needed an infrastructure that could scale. Obviously, when you have a company that's very seasonal, taking a lot more orders in the Christmas time, holiday area than they are during summer, paying for a lot of extra infrastructure, not always a good business move. So that was a big part of this, and obviously Asterisk being the most flexible product out there formed the core of the project for us. So what we ended up putting together was a core PBX solution based on Asterisk and free PBX for management, an edge sort of PBX infrastructure that you'll see in a moment that takes the calls in, flows them out to outsourcers, does call recording, and also flows the calls into the internal contact center, and then obviously an IP handset rollout to replace the legacy Avaya handsets, the analog Avaya handsets, the analog stations, etc. And then all the professional services that go along with something like this, with the heavy emphasis on training around the contact center solutions. For the phones, we used Polycom handsets. And we like them because they have a pretty good macro programming language, lets us cut out some of the training that we would otherwise have to do with folks about how to park calls and do things like that. But, pretty simple, very cost-effective product line. Low-end sets for the garden variety user, nice speaker phone for the managers and so forth, and then, good conference phones. So that was an easy choice. Here's a little diagram about the actual solution. So on the left-hand side, we have the PSTN edge machines. These are the actual Asterisk servers that physically connect to TDM circuits from various carriers. At the center, we have a core PBX, which services the administrative users. This is where all the SIP handsets register and where most of the DID traffic comes in. And then in the virtualized infrastructure, we have our Presence server. This is the Presence Contact Center platform, as well as an Asterisk server that Presence calls OpenGate, which is basically a proprietary hook back into the Presence infrastructure. So that's a good segue into just who is Presence. They are a company that started about 11 years ago or so in the Avaya space. They've developed a very mature, robust contact center that really scales well. They've got it in some very large sites in Europe, some thousands of agents at different locations. And it's a stable product. It's been out there for a while, but it's pretty cutting edge. They've got the screen recording. They've got modules that allow you to do website chat, social media integration, all tied back in with the contact center reporting tools and things like that. So when your agents are doing things like answering emails, you can still get productivity analytics in a way that you can't with some of these more traditional platforms that don't have those things built in. So in any case, it offers a lot. At Harriet Carter, it's mostly an inbound solution, so they don't take advantage of the outbound predictive dialer and things like that. But we have other customers that are straight call centers that do work for other companies that do outbound telesales campaigns, robocall reminders of appointments, and things like that. And the Presence platform allows us to do those things pretty effectively. So, as I said, they started in the Avaya world, and about 4 years ago, I think, they looked at developing a direct integration with another legacy vendor. They evaluated several, and Asterisk was really starting to pick up market share at that point, and it really is essentially a Swiss Army knife that allows you to connect to any legacy platform or be a standalone IP telephony infrastructure. So it's a pretty easy choice for them, especially with the open manager API and the fast AGI and things like that. So Presence runs their main server on a Microsoft Windows environment. You can choose either Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server for the database. And then, as I said, the OpenGate platform is sort of an extension of Asterisk in an N+1 configuration, so we can scale up to accommodate pretty much any number of agents. On the agent desktop, you have the screen pop, which shows you, who you're talking with, allows you to jump right into the order entry screen so that you can start to take the customer's information right away, their credit card, what they want to buy. So it improves productivity, but it also helps you with the workflow and the management of your agents. So let's say you need to take a break. There's a button up there on the toolbar that says break. So if you want to stop taking calls, you need to push that button. And other things like that help drive productivity to the agents. So very popular with management. You get pretty good reporting, so you can see who's working, who's taking long breaks, who's taking a lot of time to wrap up calls, things like that. And as you see, some of those improvements, especially with respect to just auto answer, which was something that the Avaya platform didn't have for these guys, just having the agents take the call right away, there are significant productivity improvements as we go through this. So In any case, there's supervisor screens with different analytics, live wall boards so they can see calls waiting and calls in queue and agent, who's logged in, who's logged out, things like that. And then from a reporting and from a tracking perspective, being able to play back calls as well as look at the agent's screens was a big deal. So Presence offers screen recording. So now, instead of just listening to a call and trying to see what happened, you can literally see what the agent was typing at the time that they were speaking with the customer. So in several instances, they were able to uncover some fraud that was going on, some errors and mistakes and things like that, and some other unexpected outcomes. But that little sort of red window represents the screen of the agent. You can actually pop that out so it's full screen so you can actually see what they were doing. But that's the integrated recording playback. We ended up doing a couple custom things for the customer to accommodate some of their extra needs. One of which was a Flash-based PHP application which actually dips into the Asterisk CDR database to represent live call stats over a period of time. It was originally set for like 24 hours, but it ended up getting really green. So the customer has it refresh every hour. So they keep it up on a couple of screens so they can see throughout the day when people are waking up, when they start to call in from the West Coast, and where their call traffic is coming in. And this actually helps them understand whether the Postal Service has dropped their catalog where they expected it to be at whatever time. So if they know they had a big drop go out to the West Coast or to the Northeast or something, and it's supposed to hit on a Thursday, and they watch this thing all day, and they say, oh, no, it's not really lighting up. This helps them really kind of get a better perspective on how the catalogs are out there and so forth. And the other thing was an improvement in the way they flow calls out to the outsourcers. So these are quasi-answering service / call centers that have agents available all the time, ready and willing to take any call that comes in and take an order on behalf of Harriet Carter. So in the past, what they had done was just flow the calls out when agents were unavailable, not really having the ability to try the agents multiple times or wait for people to become available. So through some Asterisk dial plan macro programming and some external stuff, the customer is actually very savvy. They wrote a BlackBerry interface so they could just shoot a text message to the system, update a back-end config file, and the dial plan reads that to figure out what percentage of calls should be sent to which outsourcer. So the bigger company might get 75% of the calls or 50% of the calls if their hold times are getting higher, things like that. So they really do track this stuff throughout the day. And then one change that was made relatively recently was the outsourcers changed the way they answer calls. So instead of picking up immediately upon dialing in and then putting the customer in their own music on hold, the outsourcer actually rings essentially on the PSTN. So Harriet Carter is actually able to play their own music on hold and monitor the amount of hold time that the outsourcer has. So if we're ringing for a minute or something like that with one of these outsourcers, we can actually hunt through and try to find one that's got better service at that time so we can get the customer service faster. So that's improved things quite a bit. So talk about the project deployment. All credit to the logo owners and trademarks there. Fair use. The original design basically called for us to front-end the Avaya infrastructure so that we could gracefully phase it out. What this means is we put some PRI lines between the Asterisk infrastructure and the Avaya servers, simulating the PSTN. So the Avaya really didn't know anything had changed, but was now talking to Asterisk as opposed to directly with the call carrier, or the phone carrier rather. So we were able to make a determination within the Asterisk infrastructure as to whether we were going to even send the call through to Avaya, so we could start to peel off users, groups, and people one at a time or en masse or what have you as the customer needed to do that. So the way the call flow worked was we would have a call come into the Edge Asterisk infrastructure based on the DID. It would route either to the core PBX or over to the Avaya, to the legacy handsets. And as the project unfolded, I'll talk about how that actually worked. So I said phase one was getting the Asterisk infrastructure in place, front-ending the Avaya to facilitate the transition and give them flexibility as to when they moved people over. That was a big deal. They really couldn't accommodate any downtime. So we actually worked with their toll-free rest board to send the call traffic over to their outsourcers during our maintenance window so that there was never a time where anyone got